Hello everyone, welcome back. This is a new lecture in your course, Linux for Absolute Beginners by Avionics. My name is Ahmed, and in this section we are discussing how to deal with files in Linux. And let's have a look at how to list files. We have been using the command ls since like the beginning of this course, and we said several times that ls is one of the most common commands in Linux. It is used to list files in the current directory or in another directory that is passed to it as an argument. But ls has a number of options that will provide more features and more functionality for you as a user. So let's have an example. Here I'm using the text mode of Ubuntu because all the commands that we're going to deal with in this section are going to be in the text mode. So let's have a look. Now ls in its simplest form will just list the directories that are present in my home directory or in my current directory. I am in /home/Ahmad, and if I add in -l, and -l here stands for long listing, I will have some more information about each directory and file. I will have the first column representing my permissions, and I also have the owner user, the owner group, the size of the file, the last modification date of the file or directory, and finally the file or the directory name here at the last column. Now in Linux, I have the concept of hidden files. And hidden files are those files or folders that have their name starting in a dot. If you have a file or directory that has a name starting in dot, that means that it will not show in the standard listing of the ls command unless I use an option called a. So if I have ls -a like this, I will display some files and folders that did not appear before. Like you can see here, .audacity data, .bash_history, the bash logout, and other files and folders that are supposed to be hidden in the standard ls listing. And I can also combine different options together. This is a general concept in Linux that you can combine different options together. So I can use -l followed by -a, and it will give me a long listing output together with all the hidden files and folders. I can also use a shortcut for this. I can type ls -la. Instead of just adding -a, I can just type -la, and it will give me the same output. Another option for ls is --color, and this is enabled by default in Ubuntu and in some other systems. And this makes ls provide a different color for different types of entities that it displays. So for example here, as you can see, I have the directories colored in blue, the regular files or the normal files are colored in white, the executable files like this file here, hello.sh, is colored in green. So this may be useful if you want to quickly spot different types of files and directories on your listing. Now what if I want to display? Now if I passed in a directory to ls like this, ls documents, let's say ls desktop, it will display the files and directories underneath this directory. But what if I want to display the metadata of this directory itself? Let's say I want to display the metadata of desktop. I can add in -d, and -d would just treat this directory as if it was a file, in the sense that it will display that directory as if I am displaying a file, as if I'm passing in a file to ls like this, happy.txt, which is a file. It would just display the name of the file like this. If it is a directory, I will pass in -d. But -d is useless without -l, because what is the use of displaying just the name of the directory? I want to display the meta information or the metadata about this file, about this directory. So -l followed by d will get me the metadata of this file. I have here the permissions, the user owner, the group owner, the last modification date, and so on. And another way of quickly spotting the different types of entities in the ls command output is using the F capital option. So I can type ls -f instead of -color, -f, and this will add a special character after each entity, and this character will define the type of this entity. So for example, if this entity is a directory, the character that will be placed behind it is the slash, like this. This makes me identify the entity that preceded it as a directory. It also adds an asterisk to the end of the executable file, just to spot that this is an executable, and normal files do not have any characters behind them. This is just another way of quickly identifying different types of entities. It adds a special character after various types of entities. And finally, we have a -r, and -r here is short for recursive. It will display all the directories and files underneath a directory, and also it will display the contents of other directories that are beneath the parent directory. So it will display the parent directory, the subdirectories of this parent directory, and the subdirectories of this parent directory, and so on until all the files and directories under this directory have been displayed. So for example, I can say ls-lr/var, which is a large directory that contains a lot of children directories or subdirectories. As you can see here, the output is very, very long, and ls will display the path of each subdirectory before displaying its contents so that you don't lose your way in the output. So for example, this is the contents of /var/spool/postfix/pid. This is a directory under var. Okay, and this is var spool postfix etc, and so on. Now let's talk about file creation. When you use a program like, for example, write, in order to create a file, you create a file in an empty document, for example, and then once you've finished, you will click on the save button or the save as, and this button will save this file in the location that you specify. Actually, it's going to create a new file in the location that you specify with the name that you specify. But in order to create an empty file, just an empty file, the command line provides you with a very simple tool for this called touch. Touch is a command that will create an empty file in the path you specify, or in the current path if you just type the file name. And if that file already exists, touch command will just update the modification time of that file or directory to be the current date and time. So let's have an example. Now let's say here I want to create a new file that's called file1. That file does not exist yet. I want to create it. I don't want to use any GUI program for this. I want it to be as simple as possible. So I'm going to use touch followed by the file name, which is going to be file1, and that's it. Now if I ls file1, I'll see that I have a file that is called file1 with this owner user and this owner group, and the modification time is right now, June 6, 1:16 a.m., just the current date and time. So what if I use touch again and I passed in the same file name, file1, as the argument? Now the modification time is 1:17, which is the current date and time. And touch enables you also to slightly alter its behavior. What if I want to just modify the date and time of the file if it exists, and if it did not exist, I don't want to create a new file. I just want to update the modification time of a number of files, and I don't want to by accident create new files that I don't want to create. So in this case, I will have to use the -c option with touch, and the -c option will prevent touch from creating new files if they do not already exist. So let's say, for example, I wanted to modify the date and time of file1, and by mistake I typed file2 instead of file1. If I typed enter, I will see that I do not have any new files created in my directory. The last file that has been created is file1. Now if I want to change the date and time, the modification date and time of file1, and I don't want to create a new file, I will use the -c, and now I have file1 date and time modified to be 1:18, which reflects the current date and time. Another handy option is that you can even specify the specific date and time that you want touch to add or to update the file with. So for example, I can say touch, and I want this modification time to be yesterday, June 5 at 12:16 a.m. like this. Pass in file1. Now if I ls file1, I will see that its modification time has been updated to be that of yesterday, because that is the date and time string I've added to -d option. Now let's have a look at how to copy files. The easiest way to copy files, of course, in a GUI application like Nautilus is to right-click on a file just like you do in Windows or in Mac and select copy, and then on the destination directory where you want to copy this file to, you just right-click on any empty location and then click paste, and this will copy the file or folder from the source to the destination. It's as easy as that. However, in the command line, you do have this functionality available with a command that is called cp for copy, But CP has a lot more functionality and a lot more options than Nautilus or GUI applications do. Let's see an example. Now, the first feature that CP provides over GUI applications is that you can copy a file and change its name at the same time. So I can copy file 1 and I can call it file 2. So in order to show what we are doing, let's add some text here. This is file 1, save. Now I will copy file 1 and I will name it file 2 like this, and it will be in the same location. And if I have a look here, I have file 1 and file 2. If I cat file 2, I will see that it contains the same content as file 1. This is file 1, but the name is different. So CP will not only copy your file, but we can optionally add a new file name to the original file. But if you want to copy a file from one location to another and keep its same name without changing, now in this case, all what you have to do is just use copy without any name at the end. Just copy file 1, for example, and put it in directory desktop like this without any file names at the end. And if I cd to desktop and ls, I will see that I have a file called file 1 here, and it has the same information as the file 1 contents on the original location. Okay, now let's have a look at some of the options that copy provides, or that CP provides. Now what if I want to copy file 2, and let's first write some text that makes this file recognizable. So this is file 2, and I want to copy file 2 to desktop, but I accidentally add in file 1 as a file name. Now what's that gonna do? It is going to overwrite file 1 by file 2 by the contents of file 2. So if I cat file 1 now, I'll see that it contains the text that was placed in file 2. This is file 2, but I don't want that to happen. So first let's make things the way they were before. This is file 1. Okay, and if I want to make sure that I don't accidentally overwrite an existing file, I can have -i for interactive mode. Now if I want to copy file 2 to desktop and I used file 1 as the name, it will give me a prompt: CP overwrite desktop file 1, and I have to enter a yes or a no in order for the copy operation to complete or to be aborted. So if I press no, the copy operation will get aborted and I will have the same information of file 1 unaltered. Some systems add the -i by default to CP. So whenever you use CP in order to copy a file to a location that contains a file with the same name, CP will prompt you for an action as to whether or not to overwrite the file that is already existing. If you have a system that has this option turned on, you can easily turn it off by using the -f option. -f for force will force writing the destination file with the source file, and it will not complain. So I will type file 2, copy file 2 to desktop, and I intentionally want to overwrite the file 1 with the contents of file 2, and without asking any questions, just copied the file to file 1, overwriting its contents. And as you can see here, file 1 again this is file 2, which is the contents of file 2, overwrote file 1. Now another handy option is -p, and -p will preserve, hence the name, p for preserve. It will preserve the permissions and the modification time and other metadata of the file. So let's say, for example, here I have file 1 and file 2. If I copied file 1 and I used -p, notice here the modification time, it's 120. And I will copy file 1 and I will choose file 1 dot, for example, new, whatever. Now if I have a look here, I'll see that file 1 and file 2 are having the same modification time. Although the current data time now is 125, file 1.new, and although it is created right now, it has the modification time of 120, just the same like file 1 had. Okay, so this is because I use -p, and -p will preserve permissions and modification time of the files that are being copied. Now, if I want to use CP to copy entire directories like this, I want to copy desktop, for example, to desktop_backup. I want to back up my desktop with all the directories and files that are underneath it. If I press enter, I will see that CP is omitting directory desktop. That is because CP by default does not copy directories. If you wanted to copy directories, you will have to use the -R like this for recursive, and that makes CP copy the directory desktop and all other files and directories that are beneath it to this new directory like this, desktop _ backup. And that way I have desktop _ backup containing the files and directories that were present on the original desktop directory. Let's ls here. As you can see here, I have all the files and directories that were present in the original desktop folder or directory have been copied to the desktop _ backup. And more than often, you are going to use those two options together, -R and -P together, because the first one copies the files and folders recursively and the second one preserves the permissions. So this is like when you want to back up your directories and files from one location to another, you will use those two options. That's why CP provides a shortcut for those two options, which is -A for archive. -A is just -P plus -R. It will preserve permissions and metadata of the source files and folders, and it will also copy files and directories recursively. Finally, we have CP -U, and U is for update, and update will only copy files if the destination file is older than the source file, or if the destination file does not exist at the first place. So you can use this option just to sync two directories together. Imagine that you have two directories. One is newer than the other, and both of those directories contain common files, but the files that are on the source directory have been modified recently, so they are newer than the ones on the destination. But other files are new. Other files are not present on the destination. They're just present on the source directory. So I want to copy the files that are not existing at the first place, and I want to override the files that are newer than the destination, but I don't want to copy other files. I don't want to overwrite files just because their names are similar. Maybe I have files on the destination that are newer than files on the source, so I don't want the older files to override the newer files. You get the idea? So using -U will update the destination folder with new or non-existent files from the source directory. Now, in the coming lecture, we're going to see how we can move files in a Linux using the command line, so see you next.